You want to keep the horse's stomach healthy and happy and not bombard it with a whole heap of feed. Hi everyone, welcome to QnA Friday. Today we have a couple of questions. One is from a student via Messenger and one was asked by a student in a lesson. So question one is, I only ride 3 times a week. Is it okay to feed my bucket horse? My bucket horse. I only ride 3 times a week. Is it okay to feed my horse a bucket feed on work days? If yes, should I be feeding before or after I ride? So this is a really good question about feed and when to feed and how much to feed, really. If you're feeding your horse more than 1 kilogram of hard feed, you really need to be feeding that horse regularly, like nearly every day. Preferably 7 days, but it's definitely, at least 5 or 6, because the horse's stomach gets used to the grain and the, that type of feed. You want to keep the horse's stomach healthy and happy and not bombard it with a whole heap of feed. However, if you're feeding less than 1 kilogram of hard feed, it's not quite so bad. Like, it's not that much of a weight of feed that's going to impact the horse's stomach. So generally, yes, if you're feeding less than 1 kilogram of feed, then feed it on the days that you're working it, and I would feed it after you ride. You can always give the horse a handful of chaff or a tiny bit of hay, like literally a handful of hay, and that will help prevent ulcers, especially if your horse is a thoroughbred or has had ulcers in the past. That's what you could do before you ride. But in terms of a hard feed, you can wait until after you ride and then just give the horse the hard feed, the bucket feed then. It might be a nice way for both of you to come down from your ride as well and, bond after you've had a ride. So yes, if you're only feeding 3 times a week and it's less than 1 kilo, that's fine. Any more than 1 kilo, I would feed it 5 or 6 days a week, preferably 7. But of course, you may not need that much feed on the days that you're not riding. So if you're only riding 3 days a week, you might feed literally a handful, maybe a cup of that feed, and then on the days that you do ride, then you might be giving, your 1 kilogram plus, so that the horse's stomach is continually experiencing the grain and whatnot, so that by the time you do need to do the big feed, the stomach is going to stay happy. And certainly a horse that's in work only 3 times a week probably doesn't need that much feed. And I know that this rider is a dressage rider, so she's focusing on her flat work. She's not jumping, she's not doing endurance, she's not going cross country. So the horse's workload is generally low to medium level, and that kind of feed ratio is fine for that particular horse. If your horse was doing more intense work, and certainly if your horse was sweating a lot, I would have a look at exactly what you're feeding and feed accordingly. And again, if your horse is doing that kind of work but not very often, you would take that into account as well. So there's quite a few things to think about, and I hope that question has helped you. Let's have a look at question number 2. So we're at the change of season, and this question is relevant for that. What do you do for rugs? So what do I do for rugs? And this rider asks, at what temperature should I rug my horse? Now, in terms of rugging, there's a plethora of choice. You can have synthetic rugs, canvas rugs, woolen rugs, cotton rugs. And for me, I use a combination of all of those, but not necessarily at the same time. So the temperature that I start rugging is about 15, but then again, it depends. So I always check the weather at night, and I check the little graph to see when it is going to dip down to 15. If it's 15 for most of the night, then I would put a rug on my horse. But if it's only, if it's 17 or 18 for most of the night, and then it only dips to 15 in the last couple of hours right before sunset, then I probably wouldn't put a rug on. But 15 is about the temperature where I start looking at what to do. And at 15 degrees, I would put an unlined canvas on my horse. So then we go down to 12 degrees, that's my next cutoff. So at 12 degrees, the horse gets a woolen and an unlined canvas, and that's during summer. In winter, if it's 12 degrees or less, they would get a synthetic, and that's purely a practical thing. In summer, you're sometimes using the canvas, sometimes you need a woolen, and I don't want to be putting rugs away and getting them out the next day. You know, like I have a canvas and a woolen on that horse's stable, ready for that horse, and then when the temperature does go to be consistently colder, I will put that canvas and woolen away and then bring out the synthetics for each particular horse. So 12 degrees, yeah, that's my next cutoff. Anything under 10, I would put a synthetic on. You generally don't find, you know, where I live, it's not usually 10 degrees or less in summer. So yeah, so that they would have that unlined canvas and a woolen on as it gets cooler. And then as we're now in autumn, heading towards winter, so I've brought out the synthetics this week. And so this week we've had 8 degrees, so that's a synthetic, down to 6. So anything 6 and under, they have a synthetic rug and then a synthetic neck rug. And that then does them down to 0, and then it usually depends again on the night and the type of weather. Around 0 or 1, they'll have the woolen on under the synthetic with the neck rug as well. And then it also depends on the horse. So one of my horses is a bit of a hottie. He gets quite warm, so I always go a little easy on the rugs with him, whereas the others, I know that I've got a bit more leeway. And so the hot horse, I also like to have breathable materials, so like the canvas and the wool. That's why I like to use those products. Whereas in winter, the breathability doesn't matter quite so much because you just want them warm. So, so that's what I do with mine, and it goes without saying that under all of those is a white cotton rug. Who wants to be washing the big heavy rugs because they've gotten hairy and dirty? Not me, no thank you. So I will have a cotton rug underneath that, and then that cotton rug is what gets washed, and you know, they'll get a clean one on. And it helps to keep the top rugs cleaner so that, you know, I don't have to deal with horse hair and dirt. Yeah, so that's the temperature. That's what I do for my rugging. Of course, there's always clipping. You know, we're coming up to April soon, and that's usually the month that I clip. So, you know, when you clip a horse, you're taking a layer of warmth off, so you don't forget you need to add a layer of warmth for that. So a clipped horse, I would just have a woolen rug on, start with that, and then I would go for my rug selection depending on the temperature. And then of course, some of my horses are in stables and some of them are out in the paddock. Some of my paddocks have shelter and some of them not so much. So I take all of that into consideration as well. Generally the paddocked horses are rugged a little heavier than the stabled horses, and the stabled horses I will sometimes wait a little longer in the evening to put their rugs on because it's still quite warm, you know, especially in the summer, towards the end of summer. Yeah, so I wait a little while. They might have their rugs on at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, so after dinner. And that just sort of helps them to stay not too warm, but you know, they then don't get really cold in the early hours of the morning. If you found this video useful, don't forget to hit the like button. If you know someone who's wanting to know what to do with feeding or rugs, share this video with them. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future videos. We upload twice a week. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time.